PUB is start. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Welcome to PUAB meeting for August 2022.
Turn your mic on.
Turn your mic on. People can't hear you. There you
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the PUAB meeting for August 2022. We've got the first item on our agenda is roll call. Before we do that, I'd like to welcome our newest member, Michael Talcott, down on the end. So welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Now, Christine, would you call roll, please?
David McDowell,
Here.
Bridget McCandless,
Here.
Sherry Tyndall,
Here.
Anthony Jeremita,
Here.
Les Boatwright,
Here.
Michael Talcott.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is our annual officer elections for the chair and vice chair positions.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I would like to nominate Anthony for president,
For chair.
for chair.
Okay,
I'll second that motion.
okay. We've got a motion on the table for Anthony to be chair. Got a motion and a second. What about the vice chair position?
I would nominate Mike for that position.
Okay, so Michael Talcott's been nominated to be the vice chair, and there's a second on that.
I'm sorry, who was the second? Okay.
Okay, so we've got a motion and a second on both of those. We'll do roll call. I guess we'll do for chair first.
Any other nominations?
Oh, is there any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate Les to remain as chair, Anthony as vice chair.
I'll second both of those.
Okay, so now we've got a second motion on the floor and second for me to stay as chair, as Anthony as vice chair. Okay. So how would you like to vote on this one?
I guess I would ask the question, does everybody accept the nomination if they're elected?
Sure.
Yeah,
And Mike?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
okay. So how would you like to fix this conundrum? What's our rules say for that?
I don't think it says.
Chair first, I think. I mean, that's normal.
Okay. So does Anthony and I, do we arm wrestle to the death?
Typically Robert's Rules of Order or Demeter's, whichever one you use, you would basically poll or take a vote of who all in favor of this one, all in favor of that one.
That's about the only thing we can do. So all in favor of Anthony being chair, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Maybe raise your right hand. That's three. Okay, for myself. So that's a tie. So we're one short.
Yeah. That's why we need.
Chair breaks the tie.
That's going to be awkward.
Chair does.
Yeah.
Chairman gets to vote twice.
They break the tie.
Well, they break the tie when they're not voting. Typically, a chair only breaks a tie when they're not voting.
Somebody can drop out. You guys can revote. All kinds of options.
You know what? I'll step away and you can be chair
Okay.
for $10. Okay, so to be clear, we just did chair, so we did rock, paper, scissors, and Anthony won. So he's chair. Now vice chair. We've got two names on the table.
No, his is gone.
Oh, his is gone. That is true. So we've got Michael then as vice chair.
Mr. Chair, I would like to nominate Les Boatwright as vice chair.
Okay, is there a second?
Second,
Okay, there's a second. So now we have two people for vice chair. Yes.
so for discussion, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, sure. I'm an RN. I've lived in the city 61 of my 63 years. I have a wonderful wife at home, 5 kids. I'm here to try and do the best I can for the city and the people that live around me. I don't know what else you want to know, but I'm not used to expounding on
And
So
background in utilities or
No.
city in any way?
No.
Okay.
worked for Power and Light a long time ago out of college, and for about 2 years. So
Mr. Boatright, you want to talk about yourself a little?
Well, been with the PUAB about a year, I guess. Been vice chair for part of that when our chair stepped down. Spent 33 years with KCP&L in all various parts of the company. Spent a year at Missouri Power and Light before that. Been around the utility business basically my whole professional career in all areas of finance, all the way through operations, generation, transmission, distribution, all different phases of the company. Been involved with the city in quite a few things with stormwater, planning commission for about 15 years. So kind of been around the block on that. So we have two candidates for vice chair. We'll do the same thing. All of those in favor of Michael as vice chair, signify by raising your right hand. 3. All those for Les as vice chair, signify by raising your right hand. So it's a 3-3. And if Michael, if you have a burning desire to get involved, you can be vice chair.
I'm ready to get both feet in the water.
Okay? Well, then I'll what's the right term? Concede. Yeah, I was going to say acquiesce, but that's not the right word. Concede. And we'll make Michael the vice chair. So we still need to vote both. Yes. So we're gonna take the vote then for Anthony as chair. Or you can do the roll call, I guess, for that.
Yeah.
So Anthony for chair.
Michael Talcott,
Yes.
David McDowell,
Yes.
Bridget McCandless,
Yes.
Sherry Tindall,
Yes.
Anthony Jeremita,
Yes.
Les Boatright.
Yes. Now we'll do the same thing for the vice chair position with Michael. Please call the roll.
Michael Talcott,
Yes.
David McDowell,
Yes.
Bridget McCandless,
Yes.
Sherry Tindall,
Yes.
Anthony Jeremita,
Yes.
Les Boatright.
Yes.
Yes. Sorry, turned it off. Okay. Well, we'll welcome our new chair and vice chair, and the meeting's yours
Thank you.
immediately. Now.
Okay. All right. Our next item on the agenda is some discussion on Mr. McDowell's request for information.
Let me, I sent out a letter about prior to the last meeting and it was not put on the agenda. So I sent out a second one after getting several of my answers answered prior to this meeting. And I sent it and it didn't get published. They published last month's letter. So I passed out this month's letter and I've got 6 items that I would like to throw out there and city staff can tackle it at their leisure. The first one is IPL has a debt of approximately $360 million. I would like a spreadsheet that lists each bond issue, what it was used for, the date it was issued, the total amount with interest, the interest rate, the current balance, and the date that it will be retired. Yes, go ahead.
Could we have a copy of that list, please?
I can give you a copy of the letter. I made enough for probably 30 people.
Also, if you check the ACFR from last year, all the debt information should be in there.
You know, I can tell you that there's information everywhere if I look deep enough for it. In fact, that's where I'm getting a lot of my information. I shouldn't have to do that. I'm serving at the convenience of the city. I don't get paid for this. So when I ask for something, it needs to be as quick as possible so I can wrap my head around it to help you all make good decisions. That's as being an advisor does. Here, let me pass these over to you. If I could get that number 1 back by next meeting, that would be appreciated. The next item, I'm being confronted by several citizens that have heard that IPL is for sale. I would like to be able to discuss this today with everyone that's here, city staff, and the rest of the board. I want to know what everyone's opinion is on this. Is this a good thing or a bad thing to sell IPL? So whoever wants to lead off, be my guest.
Mr. Chairman, if you would prefer to go through the entire list and then discuss it as a board, or I can give you the short answer on all 6 of these right now. And if you want more information, then staff would have to set aside time to research if that's what the board desires. But I can give you a quick answer on all 6 of these right now.
Would that be okay with
Yes,
you?
it would be great. In
Okay.
fact, you're-
The first one on the bonds, I'm sorry, but we have repeatedly tried to correct the record. We are not $340 million in debt. That's a mischaracterization that has been pushed by a number of people, whether those are board members or other officials, but it's simply not accurate. We are $114 million in debt, which has been presented at multiple presentations over the past year during the refunding of the bonds. All of those presentations included a detailed listing of what our debt is, what those bonds came from, what they are, but it's approximately 114 million in debt. And then the rest of that is what would be rightly considered and as described in several of the financial proposals that have been, or presentations that have been made, those are contractual obligations. Over the life of the contract, the Iatan and the Nebraska City plants would have 140 million and another, I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but those plants, the obligation that we have under those contracts, if the contract remains in effect for the life of the contract, should something transpire that we would terminate the contract, then those obligations would go away as well. So it's not right to characterize those as debt because they are subject to the terms of the contract. But 114 is our current bond debt, and again, those have been discussed in multiple presentations over our bonding issues.
Jim,
Yes,
could I get a list of the 114?
we can do that.
Also, on the future obligations, is there a way that I could, we're talking about alternatives. What are we going to do to generate power? And it's hard for me to say yes to anything without comparing. I mean, I would like to know what we're paying per kilowatt hour and what we're getting back per kilowatt hour to see if we're getting a good deal or not.
And again, we have done that, multiple presentations. I'll go back and copy those and
I can
provide them
tell
to
you, as the senior member of this board, more time than anyone else, I don't know what it is, and I'm sure the new guys don't know it either. So it's time for a refresher. It doesn't have to be lengthy. It can be very short and sweet.
All right, the second item, the issue of the utility being up for sale. Again, this is another thing we discussed last month. No, we are not for sale, and we are not engaged in discussions of sale. We are not searching for a buyer. We are not in discussions with any financing groups for the sale. Quite frankly, that would be a charter violation. The city charter requires the city to have an electric utility, and until such time as there is a charter review, a charter revision, which is probably, I would say, at least a 1.5 years, 2-year process before that would ever go before a vote. And then if it was voted, the process to do anything with that would be another several years in the making. To even have such discussions would be extremely premature. I can tell you certainly as the director of the electric utility, I would not recommend it. It would actually increase the cost to the city, and we could have discussions that would prove that. But the bottom line is we are not for sale. I can't control the rumor mill, and yes, there are rumors out there that say that IPL's for sale, but those are just what they are, rumors. There are no negotiations, there are no talks, and there won't be as long as the charter requires us to have an electric utility.
Before we go on to number 3, is there any comments from any of the other members here? What's your all's feelings on this? Because I'm hearing way too many rumors that we are for sale. Has anyone else heard that besides me?
I've heard rumors, but
I mean, nobody here, does anybody want to sell this thing? Because as far as I'm concerned, it would be a terrible mistake.
No.
I think that you should at least ask the question of what that would look like, because I don't know that you can have any substantive conversation without understanding why that would be terrible for the city. So I think that there's enough question when you look at, losses over time, what are all of the options for the utility? So I think that deserves a discussion.
And that's what this is for. I think, Bridget, John Oliver, I'm showing my liberal side, right? John Oliver had a special on his show probably a month ago talking about utilities that have been sold to big power companies and how the communities are so sorry they made the mistake. And I started doing a little research and I kept thinking, independence, we own our power company, we own our water company. We control our destiny because we have control of those items. When we turn them over to a third party, we lose that. And that scares me. Even the thought of a rumor running around is bad. It's bad for business, it's bad for the city.
I can give you two certainties. The city's operating costs would go up because the things that IPL does on behalf of the city, which there are every year we have the transfers back and forth between the departments, so IPL is compensated for those, but we do it at cost. Someone else that comes in and buys that would not, if they even provided those services, would certainly not do it at cost. They would be doing it for profit. Second, your rates would almost guaranteed your rates are going to go up.
They have to pay for their debt service. They have to pay for their debt service. Guess what?
Acquisition costs.
Yes.
Acquisition costs.
We would be so
operating
sorry.
costs. Yep.
As a community, it would be terrible. Okay, I'll let you. Number three, restoring the Blue Valley coal plants. The simple answer is no. The boilers would require millions of dollars in repairs. The condensate system, the lube oil system, our water plant that produced the water for the boilers, all of that would have to be extensively overhauled, cleaned. I mean, they've been sitting idle for several years now, and to start them back up, I mean, even after a winter of being down, quite often we would end up with thousands of dollars in boiler tube repairs. And that's when we shut them down with the intention of bringing them back up. Shutting them down with the intention of closing them, guaranteed great deal of expense if you could even rehab the boilers to the point of operating again. what was the capacity at Blue Valley when it was running?
All three units combined, approximately 100 megawatts.
So it was 100 at one time? Yeah, that'd be nice to have that.
But no, the possibility of resurrecting that plant is really not a feasible idea.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure. Yeah.
So if it's not feasible, even if we just played at devil's advocate, and how long and how much would it cost, even though you say it's not feasible, how long and how much would it cost roughly to get it running again so we can generate our own electricity for the city?
Well, we can do that without trying to rebuild the coal plant. We can go with natural gas. We can go with other type of units. The proposal that was put out last year was 90 megawatts of combustion turbine for approximately, I think by the time we got done, it was approximately $80 million for 90 megawatts. The other issue we have with the steam plant and to start those boilers back up is we no longer have a pollution permit. That was closed, and to get a new coal emissions permit, not likely. That would be very difficult to get through the EPA, as well as the coal combustion residuals. We closed the ponds that we used to settle the ash. We closed the ash collection facility that we had used. Again, resurrecting that now at today's prices would be cost prohibitive.
So in other words, once we no longer have an EPA permit, we can't get another one?
You have to go back through the application process, apply for a new, what's called a new source permit, and they are extremely stingy with those, especially when they are from fossil fuels.
Jim, one other question.
Sure.
The pond that we have there for the waste, how long do we have to maintain that, or do we drain it, or how does that work?
We had 2 ponds that we capped. We excavated and then we filled them in, put an impermeable liner on top, covered them over. We've got ground sampling wells around them that we have to test on a ongoing basis. That's really part of an ongoing program with the Department of Natural Resources, and we have to monitor it until they tell us we're done.
Would it be cheaper to pump those and dispose, in other words, burn it as waste at, what is it, the Blue Valley plant?
Well,
Not Blue Valley, but.
This is ash, so it's not burnable. And in the past, we have attempted to sell it. Different companies will use ash as an ingredient in drywall or cement or others, but ours was not the type of ash that they would buy. Plus, the EPA started making it more and more difficult to transfer responsibility for that ash. So we pumped the water out, so they're not a liquid mass. It's not a pond anymore. It's an impoundment.
Can it be landfilled?
It's all covered over.
Okay, so,
It's covered over.
and there's water
Grass
getting
growing
back.
on it. It's like I said, it's a clay liner that was put over the top to keep water from infiltrating.
But it can't be built on, correct?
Can't be built on.
Okay.
There are limited things you can do, but you cannot disturb that cap.
Okay.
And to follow on, who watches that? So is that an EPA thing?
Well, through the Department of Natural Resources, our environmental team at IPL, they do the sampling and keep the records and send off the reports to DNR. And again, that's part of an ongoing retirement plan that we've worked out with DNR.
And we're doing what we're supposed to. We haven't had any EPA. We're not on
We've had
the
no
watch
issues.
list.
No issues with it so far.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, number 4, the explanation of our obligations to Southwest Power Pool. Southwest Power Pool, they are a nonprofit group that monitors and controls generation and transmission across a 14-state region. They, as our agreement as members, we turn over operating control of those assets, and then SPP manages that. They schedule the most efficient that they can, plus other operating concerns, things like congestion. If they need regulation control, they'll start different units for those reasons. But Southwest Power Pool maintains that, and then in return, our obligation is to provide to SPP generating capacity equal to 112% of our summer peak. That summer peak is reported annually. So historically, if we're seeing that peak go down, we can lower our obligation. If we see that peak going up, then we have to adjust to cover that. But that's an annual report that goes to Southwest Power Pool, and then we have to guarantee the capacity. We can do that through a number of different ways. Generation we own outright, purchase power agreements like we have with Iatan and Nebraska City and the wind farms, or through what we call paper capacity, which is what we have with Onetta. We don't actually get any energy from Onetta. It just has to be deliverable from that site to Southwest Power Pool so that they can dispatch it if needed.
So I have a question. This 112% of summer peak, so every year that changes.
Well, we don't do it just on an annual basis, because you might have a really good year, and you wouldn't want to reduce your capacity to that, and then the next year have a heat wave that lasts all summer long. So what we do is we look back over like 3 to 5 year period. What's the trend? And we are seeing a lower peak. Possibly that's due to the increase in rooftop solar that's been installed. People that have taken advantage of efficiency programs to help them with their own bills. But we are seeing a little bit slightly lower peak, and so that helps us. But we do look over at an average, so we don't get caught by surprise.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
would it be possible to see a trend line over 10 years for what we projected versus our actual peak for the summers, just so that we can,
That'd be nice.
that would help?
Yeah, we can.
That
Thank
would
you.
be very nice.
We could do that. If you fail to provide that capacity, SBP can levy a fine against that utility. The fine is based on how much you fell short, and it's based on basically the cost of new generation to produce that energy. The assumption is you failed to deliver because you were avoiding the cost of getting new generation. So here's what it costs to build new generation. We're going to fine you a year's worth based on that cost. So it would be in the millions of dollars if we say 15 megawatts. We could have a penalty of over $1 million annually for missing it by 15 megawatts. But in return, we get the lowest average cost that's available out there. SPP's cost has beat the national market consistently ever since the market was formed. Number 5, the Dogwood facility additional capacity. Certainly that is one of our options. We could purchase a larger share of Dogwood. We do not recommend that. It was mentioned last year that there was an offer of an additional 70 megawatts. It would have cost us approximately $38 million for the purchase. But then you have the ongoing, just like we have with Iatan and Nebraska City and Dogwood as well, there's operating costs that we have to pay on top of that. So in addition to your debt service for the purchase price, you would have the ongoing costs. Just as an example, right now, the 80 megawatts that we currently have with Dogwood, in addition to the purchase, we are charged approximately $3 million a year in operating expenses and another $8 million a year in fuel costs. So on top of what we purchased it for, we have these additional costs that we pay as part of that ownership, and that's whether it produces any energy or not.
Jim, when we were talking about putting 90 megawatts out of the Blue Valley plant, we were talking approximately $75–80 million, correct?
Correct.
We'd still have operating expenses on top of that to generate 90.
And we estimated that debt service and operating costs, we estimated that at $5.5 million a year,
So
compared to 11 that we have here for Dogwood.
So Dogwood, what doesn't make sense about Dogwood, and I've done a little bit of research on Dogwood. Dogwood was built in 2002, so it's already 20 years old. But they're operating 650 megawatts with 25 employees.
Completely different operation.
Completely.
They are two very large turbines compared to what we would install ourselves.
And we're going to be on the hook when one of those turbines breaks, correct?
Certainly, as would Dogwood or any of the other owner partners. One fact, Indy Energy just put out their latest newsletter, and they had a little item in there about Dogwood. This year, Dogwood's only been operating at about 20% capacity, 28%, excuse me.
Do we know why they're not operating?
It's been a combination of things. Again, Southwest Power Pool is the one that decides who runs or not based on region-wide factors, and because either the heat, we haven't had the hot summer that we've had in the past. They have not called on Dogwood as much as they have in past years. You also have the increased cost of natural gas, which is driving Dogwood's operating expenses higher. So a combination of all those things, they're only running at 28% compared to a projected 40.
They had a maintenance issue earlier this year
Okay.
with the relay breaker.
This is part of my question to you. We make money when Dogwood runs, correct?
Yes.
And when it doesn't run, we don't bring any money in from that facility, correct?
We don't, not only do we not bring money in, we still have costs we have to pay.
I'm aware.
So
of
we
that.
actually lose money when it's not running.
Correct. And this is the quandary that I'm trying to wrap my head around, is the fact that we evidently don't produce power cheap enough for the Southwest Power Pool to use us. Otherwise, our CTs that we have here in town would be running all the time,
Our
correct?
CTs have been running almost every day this summer, even the oil burners.
So are we selling too cheap, maybe?
I wouldn't say that.
Are we making money on that? Because
We are.
now,
We are making money on our old beat up CTs.
Now, since we're talking about this for a second, let me share this with everybody. Last night, around 9:40, I got an email from Energy saying, here, you guys have lost $9.1 million. I got it before I got it from the city staff this morning. I mean, is that normal for any Energy to have that information prior to us getting this information?
I will say that Mr. Sondelmeyer watches the public information very closely, and when it hits the like on the city's website where you can go and download financials, when it's there, he's got it.
I was just thinking that maybe we should get that first.
Well, again, you got to be careful because those are very, very preliminary numbers, and they do not reflect the end of year closeout.
Okay, that's what they were showing on the email said, you guys lost $9.1 million this year. I mean, it's kind of, when you first get that headline, you think, what the hell are we doing? So I just.
And
want
some
you-
of that is because of budget-based finance procedures versus your end-of-year fiscal year closeout. There's a lot of moving parts in that, some of which are just now being finalized. So that $9 million is a very preliminary number, and we are expecting it to be better than that.
And we will take that from our reserve fund, is that where the money will come from?
Yes, our reserves we end up hitting the reserves when we go negative like that.
And we can't afford to go any more lower than we already are. Okay, I'll shut up and let you keep going.
Well,
I had a question back on Dogwood. So it's the 70 megawatts, $38 million purchase, operating costs of 3 plus 8. Are we also on the hook for sunsetting that operation at the end, or are we baking that into our payments?
We are part owners, so whatever closure costs would be involved with that, we would be on the hook for that as well.
So, you know, I'm looking at a paper transaction where we have, I hate to say fake energy, but you know, the Onetta contract versus owning Dogwood. When you purchase Dogwood, you have their outages. You talked about them being down for part of the summer, so you've got repair costs, you're gonna have sunset costs, you've got operating costs. Your Onetta purchase, you know exactly what that's going to be. From just a pure math standpoint, it seems like you would buy options over buying more of Dogwood. I mean, help me with the rationale there.
Well, that would certainly be part of the decision process. One of the things you have to consider with capacity is, at the time we made that contract with Onetta, there was a capacity surplus across the Midwest. That's no longer the case. And as the old coal plants are retired, and even some of the larger gas plants like Dogwood are being retired, that capacity is getting more scarce. With Southwest Power Pool proposing to increase our obligation from 112 to 115%, and SPP proposing to penalize that capacity for outages, and reduce what they credit you with, some of the utilities that would have sold capacity are hanging on to it in case they need it. So the cost of what's going to be available in the market when that Oneta contract runs out is going to be a great deal more expensive than the contract we currently have.
I have a question about Dogwood. You said that SPP is not calling on Dogwood very much. I just read an article on the Missouri Public Utility Alliance. And the headline of their article is Dogwood Energy Facility Anchors MPUA's Natural Gas Generation.
MPUA is also one of the part owners of the Dogwood facility.
Okay.
And it's one of the largest pieces of one of the largest individual pieces of MPUA's portfolio.
Okay. Okay.
Now, one of the differences between Dogwood and like our turbines, they may not be getting called on where we're getting called on every afternoon, is because you can't start up and shut down a 600 megawatt plant like you do a 15 megawatt turbine. There's a whole lot more involved in getting that up to speed, and so there are restrictions on that startup that may not fit what Southwest Power Pool's needs at the moment. That's why they would call on us, even though we're more expensive.
When we turn on those CTs, we're using that power, right? We're not sending
No,
it.
sir.
We're not sending it. Or what?
100% of the energy that we provide to 100% of that comes from Southwest Power Pool. It's a balance sheet. I mean, if you want to trace the electrons, they're probably flowing from our CTs into your outlet. But for an accounting principle, from an accounting perspective, everything, all generation goes to Southwest Power Pool, and then they provide the energy to the users.
We probably need to have one meeting to educate everybody. I understand it, but we've got a lot of newbies. Okay, go ahead.
And then the last one, the website, you are correct. The website is out of date. Just a few council meetings ago, a contract was approved for a company to work with our communications team and tech services to revamp and update that, make it a much more modern, professional website, and our piece will be updated with that as well.
Actually, Energy has a very nice little flyer. It's about 16, 17 pages that is really, it shows where everything comes from. And so you've got a blueprint there. It won't take a whole lot to put that piece together. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
two questions sort of on that idea. You know, as a little light reading the city charter, we're supposed to be doing an annual report every year from this body. And so I don't know where that is. I haven't seen one. I've been here a couple of years. So that's my first question. And the second is, we talked about doing a dashboard and we had a meeting about it. And they asked what we would like to see. And I just am wondering where that is.
At the direction of the previous chair, I believe that dashboard died because we couldn't come to it. We couldn't come to a consensus of what was needed and how to update it. And
Okay. I mean, there are plenty of utilities that do them. I don't see why we wouldn't just start with somebody's template and see what data we can stick in there, at least so we have some communication tool. Because there are a lot of questions. Community sees our balance sheet and they're like, your reserves are down, you have an operating loss. Talk to us about the good stuff. How much energy you're generating? What does it cost to generate that? You talk often about that diverse portfolio. So what does that diverse portfolio look like? So are we getting most of our energy? Are we cashing in our Nebraska city? Are we mostly getting Dogwood? Are we mostly getting solar? What does that look like? I think you have to start communicating more because people are filling in the blanks. So thank you.
And a lot of times when they fill in the blanks is with misinformation.
absolutely.
And that's killing us. Yes.
Mr. Chair, can I?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. So, Dr. McCandless, you're right. We needed to work on how we, our outreach, our communications, what all our utilities are doing, the good things and where our challenges are. And that, I think I mentioned this leading into this year's budget when that was being approved, but we added a communications person just for utilities, focused on utilities in this budget. So that person's been on board for some time, not an extended period of time, but that's very much part of that person's work.
Thank you.
And also, we do post, if anybody ever wants to go look, the 15th of every month, we post our financial statements on the city website. It takes 3 clicks to get to those financial reports, just if you're ever interested.
And Mr. Chairman, that's the short answer for the 6 questions.
Okay.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay. Anybody else have anything?
I have 2 questions, but do you want to wait until we get down to your report, or is this your report? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Next we have our reports, finance and administration.
Hi, Natalia Fairchild here, back again. Wanted to introduce everybody to Stephanie Harris. This is our new accounting manager. You've been with us for
Almost a month.
Almost a month. And I'm sorry that this, I know you had gotten kind of the updated version of the financials kind of late. Unfortunately, because it's year end, it's still a moving target. We're still making adjustments. And so that's why all of your reports stay preliminary on it, which if you look at the Indy Energy email, it does say preliminary on there too. So I just want to reiterate, this is a moving target for us right now because we still have to make year-end adjustments, okay? But if you have any specific questions, we're here to answer any of them. I know IPL does not necessarily look as well as we'd like it to be. However, there are items over here that's not reported on a budget basis type of report. And so as far as an audited financial report, it will look a little better than what you see right now. Go ahead.
I just had 2 questions on a couple of line items. I was just curious that your connection charges were off by a factor of 10. Your actual amount's 28,000 and your original budget amount 280,000. I just thought that was curious. Are we not connecting?
That I'm not necessarily sure about. I can definitely look into it. I have a feeling it has something to do with the COVID connection charges, and that's why it's down, but let me check on that, and I'll get back with you.
And then the bright spot was actually in debt service, which you had budgeted amount of 9.9 and you only expended 8.2. Is that because of the refinancing that we've done? So we're already beginning to see some financial benefits from that?
Yes.
Okay. And then just still, how long do you think it will be for us to know whether we have a $9.4 million loss?
The final audited numbers should be done by, I think,
Last year they got released in December.
yes.
Okay. And year end last year, where did we end?
Hang on.
Let's check the ACFR.
Hang on 1 second.
Your net position last year at the end of the year was 111,831,317.
And your profit loss?
Yeah, it was negative 15,829,747.
Can I request a 10-year profit loss trend line?
Look in supplemental schedules.
That would be very helpful.
I believe there is a report on that. Hang on 1 second.
We're checking the supplemental schedules in the ACFR. It's usually back here.
Your management analyst can provide that 10-year look back.
Yeah.
Okay.
We actually have something prepared for the Finance and Audit Committee meeting tomorrow, and I believe that will be part of his presentation.
Okay. And you'll send that to the PUAB?
We can.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I've got just a quick question. Can you explain to me what the revenue risk and expense risk is? It adds up to about 20 million or 24 million.
Yes.
I don't understand that.
These are the cash reserve policies that we had gotten council to approve. Basically, they are based on risk factors, multiple risk factors that will account for anything that's a shortage. So for revenue, for example, if we have a revenue shortage, the risk factor kind of moves up and down with the revenue. It's not necessarily a concrete percentage. It moves as the revenue goes up and down. And so this revenue risk is just to account for anything that we don't take in. And vice versa with the expense risk, depending on whether or not, the expenses go up or go down. This is also our reserve to make sure that we are able to cover, those expenses. We can pay for it or, just keep them in the reserve if our expenses are down.
So that's part of the total reserve then?
And I know that there was a request last time to do the cash reserve policy presentation. We are working on that. We realize that there are a lot of new people, and so we've spoken to PFM, and they are planning to come out and discuss all this so you have a better understanding of what these reserves are.
Anybody else have anything? Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chair, can I add something real quick to that? So as an example, so that policy, it's a cash balance and resiliency policy that was approved by the city council, I think in 2021. And an example of that in action, for instance, is annually that gets reviewed during the budget process. And I think it was the revenue risk. During the pandemic, the revenue risk was increased, right? Because of COVID and the uncertainty of people paying their bills and us not collecting. And then as COVID has somewhat subsided or pulled back, the revenue risk is less. So that number was adjusted downward. So I'm just giving you an example of what that looks like in action each year.
Thank you. Municipal services.
Good afternoon. I didn't have anything. If you have questions on our financials, I'm happy to answer them. But in addition to that, I just wanted to go over our project list real quick and give you a couple updates. We are at very long last trickling in pieces of our lime stabilization process. Probably still won't be actually operational in service until the spring, but finally starting to receive pieces of it. So that's long overdue. Looks like the supply chain might be finally starting to deliver. On this list, things we're getting ready to close out and send to finance would include the Cracker Neck Van Hook Sewer Project. That's been a long outstanding project, and that was something that Missouri Department of Natural Resources was talking about putting us in an enforcement action about. It appears that they have officially closed that case and released us from any potential enforcement action. So as soon as we have the actual documentation confirmation of that, we would intend to close this project. The Arrowhead Center project has finally been wrapped up. We are about 99% complete at Bison Park, and hopefully we'll submit closeout paperwork on this as well by our next meeting. And the Rock Creek Treatment Plant Fence project also has wrapped up. Some of these toward the bottom of the list are just revolving projects that we put money into every year for constant piping rehabilitation, trenchless technology, and things like that. So they will never disappear. Just so you know, those are just continuous projects. But otherwise, if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
Anybody have any questions?
You had given us an update on the biosolids.
Yes.
And where is that? Is that all complete now?
No, that's the pieces we're finally starting
I see.
to receive.
Thank you.
Yep. Lime stabilization, biosolids, it goes by a host of names. On the project list, it's actually under biosolids handling. Anything else?
Anybody else have any questions? Hearing none. Thank you. Water.
Good afternoon. Couple things I was just going to bring to your attention. Beginning September the 20th, we're going to begin 2 weeks of giving tours to the 5th grade classes in City of Independence School District. So we'll be doing that. If anybody's want to have a tour, edible aquifer, help us out, we'll be glad to entertain that and help us out. And the other thing I was going to mention, I'd prepared a report for someone else about our delinquent notices. I think I included Jim on this, but we currently have 4,021 delinquent accounts compared to 6,944 a year ago. So what we're saying there is that that's a decrease of 42% of delinquent accounts, which is a good thing. And I was also going to mention, of those 4,021 delinquent accounts, that amounts to $951,258 compared to last year at the same time, almost 1.2 million, which is a decrease of 21%, which is $247,000. To give you a picture of what that really amounts to, that's 6% of our 6,900 customer accounts that we have. So just kind of give you a feel for what we're dealing with. And Jim's folks are the ones that, when I say Jim, Power & Light they do the disconnects on a daily basis, and they shut off the electricity because it's much easier than shutting off the water. And when we shut off the water, then we're involving codes and everything else involved with that. So that's how we operate. We do those accounts. And unless they're a water-only account, we have like 3,500 customers outside of Independence, like in Sugar Creek, all the way to Lafayette County, that are customers that we pick up along the way to go out and serve our wholesale customers. So just to kind of give you a picture of where we are and how we're doing. So.
Anybody have any questions?
You know, there's all kinds of interest in the municipal services, and is there ever a point where we would think about doing tours for the public so that they can get an understanding of how these work?
I'm trying to remember when I first started with the city, we had a kind of a citizens academy, I think, and they rotated. We had a coordinator that rotated a group of folks through different departments, and I think it was each month you go visit the police department, and then but I can't remember what year, maybe
911.
And there may be those.
Yeah. So, and we've kind of talked about restarting that, but we haven't done that, obviously.
I mean, to answer your question, I know why we stopped, and it was after 9/11. I mean, that's just what caused us to button down the hatches. And there's lots of reasons and things that we can do, but we try not to turn them down. You know, scout groups organize things where we bring folks in. Again, the 5th grade, we even cut that out for a while, but we're starting that back up. And in that case, we're bussing them in. We're paying for the buses and trying to get all 5th graders through it. And we control that, obviously, in a 2-week period. But we still entertain and talk to scout groups and Girl Scout. But if somebody just randomly calls us up and asks us, it's just a little bit dicey at times. How do we handle that? And when do we do that? And staffing obviously is a little different. I don't know about Lisa. She may have a whole different opinion because I'm sure there's people lining up to go out there.
Everybody
Hey,
wants to come see
excuse
what
me,
10
Adam?
million gallons of sewage looks like.
The new communications person that you have, do they have one of these? If they do, what would be, I mean, why don't we just do a YouTube video of all of our facilities and put it on the city's website, so when someone wants to do a tour of the water plant or the sewer plant or the electric facilities, we can actually say, hey, we're kind of proud of what we have here. And we are proud of what we have here. But I'm also concerned about security. So I don't want to lay a blueprint down so a terrorist can come do terrible things to us. But if we had a way to make a video that doesn't jeopardize our security, I think that would be a wonderful thing.
Yeah, good suggestion. I know we do monthly rotations with the city manager, does job shadowing, so they get kind of behind the scenes and look at various operations. But that's a good suggestion. I'll see what the communications folks think about that.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything? All right. IPO.
First of all, there was a question about what efficiency programs are available to citizens. We actually just have one. We have a rebate available for heating and ventilation upgrades. There's an application online that they can use, and it tells exactly what's eligible, what's not, what you have to do to prove that, and then there's a rebate, and that's both residential and commercial, that we can rebate a portion of that cost. Some of the other things that are out there, we do have the low energy or the low interest home improvement loans, which are we will help coordinate through the community credit union, and that one again, that's for like if you're going to put in new windows, siding, those kind of things to improve the energy efficiency of your home. We can help residents obtain that low interest loan on that. Those are really the two programs we have. Some of the other things you'll hear about in the news, you'll hear about, time of use rates, encouraging people to move to the evening hours, to not to run their washer and dryer and dishwasher during the afternoon peak. Unfortunately, we can't offer that simply because you have to have some way to measure it, and we don't. In order to get that kind of data to tell, right now I can tell you how much energy you used last month, but I can't tell you when you used it. So in order to do that, we have to have AMI. So until we upgrade our system to that type of a program, we won't be able to offer any time of use rates. We have had citizens inquire, I don't do any of my laundry. I do this at night. I do that at night. I do this on the weekends, and it hasn't helped my bill a bit. And I tell them, no, ma'am, it won't. Unfortunately, we can't offer that kind of a program with the system that we have. So HVAC improvements and then home energy improvements, those are the two things that people can access. And the information on both of those is on our website. Other than that, I do have just a couple of things to report to you. We've had 3 major projects we've been working on over the past year. The rebuild of Substation K on Arrowhead Drive north of behind Coles. That substation has been commissioned. There are still some peripheral work we have to do to tie in all the systems, but the substation is up and running. We've been rebuilding the line from sub E to sub F, which runs down the western edge of Independence. That is about 2/3 complete, so we're doing well on that. We have been slowed down by the tremendous increase in cost of materials and labor, but we are still working at that, and that will greatly upgrade the capability of moving power on the west side of our footprint. The third thing that we've been working on is a capacitor bank for Substation A. One of our requirements under the NERC rules is that we have to be able to support the ability to, for lack of a better word, push and pull power through the system. That's called reactive power. Normally, your reactive power is provided by large rotating machines. When we shut those down, it reduced our capability of being able to provide that reactive support under the NERC rules, and this capacitor bank is the answer to that. We've been slowed down on that one just because of supply chain, but the parts are coming in. We've got the engineering and design work is all done, so as those parts arrive, we'll be putting that in and getting that in operation. Those have been the three major projects we've been working on, and they're all in good shape.
Got a question. 39th Street at Starbucks. I don't know what street that is.
That's Arrowhead.
We've got big lines on both sides of the street.
Yes, sir.
Was there any way to put them all on one pole?
No. The problem we had there is you have to provide a physical separation between those lines in order for them to have the full capacity. We couldn't get them all on one pole. Original plan was to go underground through there, but the right of way is already clogged up with other services. Our other option would have been to dig up Arrowhead and put it under the street for about another extra $700,000 on top of the project cost. So we felt it was the prudent way to go, efficient way to go, was to put them on poles.
I have a lot of people ask me questions about that, and I said, well, that's above my pay grade. So I just let it slide. But I was just curious myself.
The original plan was to go underground. It wasn't gonna, that was not gonna work.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Obviously, overtime has gotten a little attention in the city in the last several months. So I just think as we are an oversight committee, I ask the three groups, are you struggling with overtime? Do you see big overtime issues?
So we monitor that each paycheck, and then anybody over a certain amount of hours, we go and I dig into it deeper and see why, someone worked in excess of a certain amount of hours. So we monitor that regularly now.
Thank you. And then my next question is, as the world heats up, we are having hotter and hotter days in the summer, and how is that going to be impacting your work going forward? You've got employees who are doing work at 100 degrees outside. So I'm just curious, do you have a climate change plan in place for your employees? Because that's going to be a growing issue.
Well, to be honest, we haven't. We've actually had less high heat days over the last several years. In fact, that's one of the reasons why our load is down compared to what it was 5-10 years ago. Is we've been here locally. We've been having milder summers than projected, and we've not, like for example, our contract with the union. The meter readers don't have to go out and walk routes if the heat index is over 105. We've not lost a single day due to heat. They've been able to get their routes done in the morning, or we've used overtime on the weekends. When the afternoons have been hot, we've been able to get the routes done alternate times. So the fact is we're seeing less heat than we expected.
We also have heat schedules whenever we have, especially hot days where employees can come in earlier than normal to try to get their work done and out of the heat in enough time.
Anybody else? I had a question about the H6 that you talked about at the last meet. Was it H6 that had the vibration?
H6 is the one that we've had in operation for most of the last year. Just recently we had a couple of transformers that a fault damaged the transformers. The generator itself was not damaged. Okay. So now we're in a process of working through the supply chain to get those transformers either repaired or replaced.
Okay. So it was H5 that had been out for repair. It came back and now you had a vibration.
H5 is the one that had the generator fault, so it was out of commission for over a year waiting on the generator repairs. Right now when about the time it gets up to full speed, we see a vibration that we have to stop and GE is working with us right now to examine everything we can. It appears to be on the turbine end of the machine, not the generator, but we've not been able to locate a cause yet. So in fact, GE is supposed to be here next week on site to work with our mechanics and technicians to try to see if we can't zero in on where that vibration's at.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious. Thank you.
Sure.
Anybody else have anything? Okay. Yeah, we're down to upcoming items. IPL development of future generation ongoing updates. Now we're to board member comments. Does anybody have any comments?
Did Jim cover all the future generation that you wanted to discuss?
We don't have anything yet. We will continue to work with you all and with the council as we move through that, and we'll come back with another recommendation.
I did have.
Yeah.
If we're moving to board member comments, I did have a comment about people who would prefer to spread rumors or say what might be happening or it's my opinion that it's happening, rather than have any evidence. They need to watch our meetings on YouTube. They need to watch the city council meetings and study sessions on YouTube. There is no evidence of any sale of any utility on any of those meetings. If there's discussion outside those meetings by someone who might want to sell, they need to figure out how the charter commission can change the charter, and that would be a very difficult thing to do. So I'm not sure where those rumors will go, but they can't sell the utility on their own. So here we are stuck with each other. Like Jim said, the process would be several years in the making. So, I mean, it's just not happening. It's not happening right now, that's for sure. I did a little calculation looking at the intake, the income from charges for services on IPL, and I realize these numbers are, estimates, et cetera. The 32 million for charges of services, I'm picturing that coming in on people's utility bills. And I realize this is extremely rough, but a few years ago we reduced the rates. It was not necessarily something I agreed with, but if we had not done that, and again, this is extremely sloppy math, but I multiplied that 32 million and change by another 6%, it's almost $8 million. And if we're talking about shortfalls, I know where it is. I'm done.
Anybody else have anything?
I just have a question probably for finance. And when we get year-end numbers and we have our trend line, and then it will be the question back to IPL, which is how do we reverse our losses and what does that mean for ratepayers? And so that I'm sure that will come up in future meetings, but just want to be sure we address that. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Just real quick. I know I'm the new guy here, but if I could just meet with the three of you afterward, just to schedule a time to take a quick tour, that'd be great. Thanks.
And I would like to accompany him since I wasn't able to do it the last time. All right.
Mr. Chair, if I could.
Sure.
Something my deputy reminded me, last meeting you all approved changes to the utility service policy that was presented to first and second reading to the council. It was delayed. They've requested a study session presentation to look at more in depth of what those changes are, and then it's supposed to go back to the council again at the September 6th meeting. So just wanted to update you since you had approved it on where that's at.
Yeah. And speaking of which, I have a question, maybe it's for Christina. When we get like an 80-page agenda like we had last month, Is there a way we could get that more than a day in advance? I mean, that was a lot. I was up till like 2:00 in the morning trying to go through that. And at times I'm not sure your mind is wrapping around what you're reading.
Well, we put out the information to try to get the information for the agenda like a week in advance. And then we ask for it usually by that Friday or Monday, depending on when I've gotten it out.
Right.
So then it takes a little bit of time to gather all the information, get it prepared to send out, get it uploaded. So, I mean, if you guys would like to change your rules of procedure, we can certainly, look into that and discuss it. It does say we have to have everything posted and out 24 hours in advance. And
Okay.
we do, of course, try to get it out before that. I like to try to get it out by Monday, if I can, but often I can't until Tuesday.
Right.
So, I mean, if that's something you guys want to try to address moving forward.
I don't know whether anybody else struggled with that, but it took me a while it got to the point where you're just kind of skimming through it,
Well, and I think that was for the service policy.
Right.
Power and Light, which was a large document, but there was a smaller document there that kind of told what the changes were.
Right.
And I think that's why they included it, so you didn't have to do quite such a deep dive maybe.
Right.
So I think that was to help facilitate that.
Okay. Thank you. Does anybody else have anything? All right. I'm showing here our next meeting is September 15th, 2022. And with that, I guess we are adjourned. Do I need a motion for that?
No.
Okay, we are adjourned.
You can gavel.